It's so cold.
Mr. Neil Conning painting.
Value does all the work, but colour gets all the credit. I heard this once, and it stuck with me because I think it's really true. Colour is bull. Okay, colour's not bull. Obviously, colour's amazing. It's the fun bit. I think too much emphasis is put on it. People think about painting and they think about colour. They think about expression. They think about how they're going to use different colours to convey their inner soul and feelings. And I just think that it's kind of not useful when you're just trying to get good at painting or learn how to paint something. Really, I think it boils down to, at least when you're learning, at least when you're trying to develop skills, it's about depicting the subject. And for that, value is what's important. As an aside, I do understand there's two schools of thought about using the word value or tone. I'm going to say value, even though I think it's the slightly Americanized version. I've heard people here say tone, but I'm just going to say value because I don't know. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Anyway, so value. For some reason in painting, all the emphasis is put on colour. Probably because it's fun, right? I love it too. It's seductive. It's juicy and delicious. But we know in image making, we already know that a black and white image contains basically the same information as the colour image. Of course we're missing hues, of course we miss temperature, and we miss a lot of atmosphere as a result of that. But it is entirely understandable as an image, as a black and white rendering. So, or a monochromatic, it doesn't need to be black and white. The point is that you can paint a painting with pretty much any colours you like. You can mix up and change all the colours around. There's loads of examples of this, and everything still makes sense as long as the value system remains correct. Now, of course, there's loads of ways of painting. People mess with value as well, but I think as an exercise, understanding value is so important. So I decided to do some value studies, like I do all the time, but this time I wanted to not just take some image and put it in black and white. I thought it would be more interesting to look at something which was originally monochrome. So I decided to use cinema as the route through which I would look at these value studies, but also think about composition. And who better than the amazing Japanese filmmaker Kurosawa. What's his full name? I actually don't even know his full name. I'm going to have to look it up. Akira. I should have known that. And this scene from Redbeard, which is an amazing film if you haven't seen it and you're into that kind of thing. I really wanted to watch this film while I was painting it, but I can't. Obviously subtitles, I can't speak Japanese, I can't read the subtitles and paint. So some films you can't watch when you're painting. That's just how it goes. There's more than one reason for doing this. I also wanted to understand not just value, but composition. I love the widescreen aspect ratio. I think it opens up so many compositional possibilities. It's so interesting. Something that seems weirdly don't see it so much in painting. Maybe it's because I look at so much painting on my phone, which obviously has the vertical format. It's very, this landscape is very unfriendly to posting it on social media, but so what? I like that. I like it that way.
Yeah, I do like that there's something about posting something so deliberately oppositional to the way that Instagram wants us to see images. I just like being contrary sometimes in that way. But let's jump into the painting, and I'm not going to over describe this, just talk a bit about what I'm doing. So I started with a simple little drawing just to map things out. If it matters, I used a sort of oil-based pencil. I find that's important because sometimes if you use non-oil based pencils, it seems to bleed through. Anyway, if it's red, I don't really mind a bit of that. So what are the different techniques in which you can translate an image into a tonal or value study? Now, some of the work's already been done for us here because I'm not taking full colour and mentally translating it into monochrome or into a series of value shapes and islands. It's already black and white, which does help somewhat, but nevertheless, you still have to start to group these things together. One nice little technique I use for that is this little app called Value Study that creates these kind of value island images, versions of photographs you feed it. I'll then make a little sketch of this in my sketchbook and refer back to the sketch rather than the image made from the Value Study app. I don't want to seem like I'm copying at that, but might just make a wee point about, I think some people sometimes think using technology in this way is some kind of cheat, but actually people have always done stuff like this. In the high romantic Victorian era, landscape painters used these tools called the clawed glass. Maybe you've heard of it. It's got a kind of tarnished, burnished black mirror that they would look at the reflection of the landscape in. A kind of Instagram filter for the Victorian age that would reduce the information they were looking at. These are really just all different ways of giving us a different perspective on what we're looking at. The classic thing to do is just to squint. What that really is trying to do is just reduce the information you're looking at. It literally allows less light information into your eye. So the clawed glass, this app, they're all kind of the same thing, and I would recommend using multiple and many very different ways of changing your perspective on things. Look at your painting through a mirror, stand back, squint, use an app, take a photo, whatever works for you. Try everything out. At this point in the painting, the shapes are starting to really come together. The light and dark areas are clearly defined, and I'm just working on the transitions between them and those middle values, those midtones. I'm really enjoying the single light source in this image, as well as the composition of all these people crowding round, looking at the patient on the floor. You know, all of those bodies all merge into one, and that's another really key part of thinking about these value studies, is the grouping of shadows. When you just look at the black and white image, there's still very discernible shapes in those shadow tones, but I really wanted to just simplify down so we just see it as one big mass. Just helps the compositional understanding of the piece that we see all these people kind of as one, and we see the character here as separate. It also brings into focus these two characters in the middle, as they're the ones that are lit slightly differently by that stove. There's just a little bit more information in their faces, such as in that little bit of the ear, which is just something I really enjoy. If you don't know the concept of a notan, then it's a really useful way of thinking about paintings, to break things down just into the light and dark shapes. It's a pretty traditional approach, but I think it really has made a big difference to me in my learning. Some painters that were really good at that is, well, my friend Alex Wilby. I mean, a lot of his work is entirely within that kind of notan thinking, and is really all about finding these shapes, which for me are just kind of really satisfying. I wish I could make shapes like these. Maybe the only way to get better at that is to do these kind of value studies. So now I'm doing the really fun bit of just adding in the highest value, which is pretty much just white out the tube. That's really reserved for just the stove and some of these moments where that is hitting some of these characters, tops of their heads and stuff. And I'm also just fixing some of the darker value shapes.
So that's the finished piece, and yeah, I'm kind of pleased with it. I think there's things I like about it. I like the size. I like the aspect ratio, obviously, like I was saying before, but I quite like the size. It's quite neat, nice little thing. Particularly in terms of the simplification of these sort of big value shapes, particularly in this dark area here. I really like that you can just make out some of these figures. This is only just about discernible as a head, and I like that it's on that line between abstract shape making and figuration, trying to make things look like things. You know, it's just on that line. It's really interesting to me to see how little you can get away with, and doing these kind of studies kind of forces you to think in those shapes without getting massively distracted by colour mixing. I'll see you in the next one where we do some more painting and talk about it. I mean, who's going to watch to the very end anyway? Like, nobody.